All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf Podcast where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today on the show, we've got Mike Patakas with the Maria and Mike Patakas team with Desert Sotheby's International Realty in the greater Palm Springs area of course, California. Mike, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Jerry. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. So let's just get started, everybody. Mike's got a team. They do 60 to 70 transactions a year, luxury homes, Palm Springs, second home market, kind of becoming a first home market. But that being said, tell us a little about yourself and how in the world you got in the business in the first place.
Sure. Well, my background actually started in the mortgage side of the industry. That was way back in 1998. I was in the mortgage side for about 12 years or so. I was a loan officer for a while, then I was a sales manager for quite a while. Then, of course, the market crashed around that time, like in 2008, 2000.
Yeah.
And I kept continuing to do loans, but it was the whole landscape at that point was really changing rapidly. And I've always been interested, what it was like to really be on the sales side, because I was more doing refinances back then. I mean, because it was just a whole different type of dynamic then.
Yeah.
And then we went to, so my wife and I, we had a second house out in Palm Springs that we bought like in the mid 2000s. Ended up moving here full time close to 11 years ago and just decided to start our own real estate business. It was a lot more difficult, than we kind of expected it to be, even out here, because you just kind of go, oh, it's the desert cities, it's Palm Springs and Rancho Mirage, and I'll get the hang of it soon. But it's actually pretty complex area to really learn. We have a ton of country clubs. We have leased land here. We have
Oh, wow.
each city has its own personality, and but we dove in, and here we are, 11 years later.
So you were basically doing mortgages. You'd done some sales management, refinancing mortgages,
Yeah,
and so you kind of moved into Palm Springs and started a real estate business?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow. And
yeah.
so Maria, what was she doing before this?
She was she worked at Marriott for a while, but she also did loans too as well earlier, and then she started working with Marriott hotels for a while. And so it just was like the right time, for us to kind of do something together. So and then
Yeah.
that's a lot of our, I think, our one of our big advantages, to be honest, is working together, because we can really kind of divvy up things. Some of us, like some of the clients we have, just really connect with her great, and vice versa, and so we're able to be a lot more flexible that way.
I love it. So Maria is basically the secret sauce.
She
It's
is.
everybody she's going to be
She is, yeah.
because she's in hospitality.
Yeah. So
So
yeah, she
yeah.
definitely is.
So tell us. So you clearly you've got experience in hospitality. You've got experience in real estate, but it's 2009. It's the recession, brand new market, and so you opened your own brokerage first before you joined a brokerage. Is that what am I hearing that right, or did you join?
No, we
Okay.
actually, yeah, we did join a brokerage, and this was before we joined Sotheby's, where we are today, and just really kind of really tried to learn the dynamics of being a real estate agent, really
Yeah.
from the ground up. Yeah.
So breaking into real estate for the first time ever in a brand new market, what was that like?
I think, I think of it right now. We have some agents on our team that are newer, and so you're constantly kind of reminded, of what it's like,
Yeah.
because everybody starts at zero. So for us, I think there was a ton of trial and error, and most of the things you're going to do, especially when you're starting out, aren't going to work out in your favor a lot of the time. But that's the best way to learn. We were doing a lot of blogs, a lot of open houses, a lot of whatever we could, social media, whatever we could, to start learning, trying to get clients, because we didn't have any. We didn't really know anybody out here. This was just a weekend getaway destination for us for a long time. It was a second home originally, coming out here. So we really had to kind of start. Maria got herself involved with a few organizations in town, met some people that way, and it just kind of slowly kind of kept building. But it took some time, because at that point in the market, a lot of agents had disappeared. Everything was a short sale.
Yeah.
Everything was foreclosure. And so it was just, I mean, selling a house out here for 200 or 300,000 was common.
Isn't that insane? Like
Crazy.
that's unreal.
Yeah.
Right. Like, by the way, everybody listening behind me is one that you have now for 19 million.
Mhm.
So let's talk about getting your first deal. Again, this was 11 or 12 years ago, but
Yeah.
getting your first deal, what did that look like? How did you do it?
Okay, what we did is, I thought, what was the best way to really kind of understand, the playing field out here in the desert, because we have so many communities and so many neighborhoods, and it's such a mix. Like in Palm Springs, it's so much architecture and historical elements, and then as you keep going east, it's all more newer, coming around in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, as they were kind of developing. So
Mhm.
what we did is, really did a lot of blogs, believe it or not. And we would just write blogs on these communities, because we used it as a way of teaching ourselves, about these areas and about these communities, what the price points were, where they were located, where were strong points about it, what the HOA payments were, and kind of went that way. And so one of the first calls that we had was from a blog that turned into our first sale in Palm Springs. And it was a buyer that, because we have such a great connection from here, and it's gotten more and more international here in Palm Springs as the area has grown and grown. But this was a buyer from Seattle that was looking for, a place to escape the weather up there, and we ended up connecting over the blog.
Wow. So you write these, so how many blogs were you writing?
We probably wrote at least 100, I would say.
Like, oh wait, no, like 100 posts. Like when I say a blog, you've got like a blog on a neighborhood. So was it one blog with different posts, or did you have 5 blogs running with different topics and neighborhoods?
It was that we would do a blog at a time. And whether it was something about the market itself or something about a particular community or neighborhood, that's how we kind of did it. So I was probably doing a few a week, as we were going, and then just trying to
Wow.
get statistics and all those types of things, because that was how I was learning,
Yeah.
to be
So by
honest.
the time you got the calls, so learn and market. Maybe let's
Mhm.
talk about like in luxury real estate, you need to be trust or anybody, but a sense, the more money people have, the more their focus is only on just, okay, can I trust you? Which means you know your stuff, and are you listening?
Mhm.
And doing that kind of research, you kind of know your stuff.
Mhm. Mhm. Or you just you know enough to kind of to get by. And like, I'm sure you can attest to it too. I mean, you start in a particular place, but as you kind of get more and more and more familiar with even just using the listing service and getting used to really how these developments are designed, and you kind of, as you kind of go down there, but the only way you're going to know is by going down those paths and just throwing yourself in. So with what I see a lot of newer agents do is not, like, you have to own it, that you're going to do a lot of things that will look like you're wasting time. Like, hey, I'm not going to get anything out of it. But I would say that I would completely argue against that, because anything you're doing that's adding to your knowledge, uh,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, it's never a waste of time, and it's going to end up coming back in some conversation, or how you present yourself a certain way. An email you write, a text you write, it's going to come back.
Well, anything you're doing, what's the why?
Yeah, right.
And
And
that clears it
it's
up
not
real
always
quickly.
there's not always a dollar sign by that Y,
Oh, there always is. It just may
Yeah,
take longer than what you realize when
there you
you've
go.
not had a 9 to 5, when you've had a 9 to 5 your whole life.
Right,
So,
right.
not to argue with my guest, but
No, you're right. You're right. It will end.
so so anyway, moving on. When did you? Because you know when you're an agent, you're like, okay, never, never, ever, and then that a lot of these questions. Because remember, we've got listeners who are new, we've got listeners who are selling 100 million a year, and you
Yeah,
always have that moment where you go, okay, like you get that traction, and two things happen. You kind of find who you are as an agent, and you
yeah.
also learn a little bit about what makes this business work and how to get better. When and where do you think that moment was for you and Maria? Or
Um,
for you?
I would say that we had a listing that was really kind of over our head early on, meaning that it was a massive estate in Rancho Mirage. It was probably about an acre and a half, 9,000 square feet, just architectural, a lot of steel and glass, had a lake. And so we had that was something that, okay, what it really did is like it really kind of zoned us in as to how much we love challenges. We want to take on properties that are going to be harder to sell. So at that particular time in the market, it was an extremely difficult house to sell because once again, we're at that point, especially we were a second home market. So not a lot of buyers out there were purchasing properties over $4 million. Okay. And this property had a lot to it that we needed to learn and dig in. And so we, reached out to the builder and the architect, and they had all these questions, and had so many inspections and so many ways to like kind of look at and market the property. We had a lot of events, so we were really able to kind of spread our wings in that way, and it taught us how important it is really to be out of the box as much as possible. And there's nothing that turns me off more as an agent as look, we're alike each other in our advertising as an industry, too much, in my
Yes.
opinion. And when you have an opportunity that comes your way, and I would see so many agents that had great listings, but they just stuck to the typical formula of like, all right, I'm going to get a print ad in this magazine and I'm going to get nice pictures, and that's about it. That's all I'm going to do. And wait for the phone to ring. And our approach really got set then is that we are not going to be that way. We're going to be proactive. We're going to hunt. And we're going to be looking for the buyer and not waiting for the buyer. We ended up selling the property after a few years, so it was a long, drawn out process. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, there were all kinds of ups and downs and roller coasters throughout that whole relationship with that property and the owner. And I, thank the owner for trusting in us for that period of time.
Yeah. Wow. So you get this big listing. I love you. It comes out. You love challenges. You love
Yeah.
to learn.
Oh yeah.
You like to kind of like take a problem and solve it and
Yep.
make things happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise, and
Yep.
being outside the box. So when you took on that listing, it sounds like you had your challenge, you had your opportunity to learn, but you also figured out you learned from other agents, but at some point you've got to stand out and rise above. What did y'all do to do that?
Oh man, I mean, we partnered with another agent at a beginning because that's when lifestyle videos were just starting to get going, and we're like, we need to do that, and so we partnered with him, and we, before we took the listing on, it was on the market probably for about 6, 7 years. So I mean, when I'm saying it was a challenge, it was a challenge, and it was at that point where it was ready to kind of go through to a new owner that's going to do some updating.
Would it have
Uh,
been on the market 6 or 7 years before you picked up the listing?
correct,
Okay.
correct, yeah.
Okay.
So we got it, and then so we looked in that. We did events there. We tried so many different mediums and in whether it's Wall Street Journal, so many different publications. I mean, we were knocking on the door of everything that we could to get the word out about the listing.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually even did something really unique where we did an auction. So at that point, it was definitely really different than they're more in vogue now. You're not going to see them too often in this market, of course. But 3, 4, 5 years ago, you would see them quite a bit in some estates that weren't moving.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did an auction there, which was great because we had a huge ad in LA Times and we had a giant turnout, and it just didn't get to the number we needed it to in the auction, but it was worth it. And we ended up, meeting quite a few, future clients, from that experience too, as well, that knew what we were doing and knew that we were kind of trying to push the envelope on how we could sell the property. And from that auction, though, came the buyer who ended up purchasing the property after the auction process.
Ah,
Yeah.
which that in of itself. So these auctions, you get a lot of that marketing up front that people still don't know about
Yeah.
from doing the auction. And then even when the auctions don't work, this is not an advertisement for auctions, but when they don't work, you still get the publicity and the rapport and the property's known, and you get lots of buyers in the property.
You can't. Yeah. I mean, we had probably, it was held up. What they do is they had it open for a full weekend. I think we had about 75 people through the property, which was big for that period of the market. You didn't see that kind of turnout at all anywhere else.
Remind us the price point of this one. What was the list price?
It was 4.5.
So $4.5 million in the quote Great Recession. And you guys got 75 people through. And the biggest lesson I'm hearing is whatever it is, do it. Like whatever stone, there's the marketing of find your buyer, target them, market to them. But on the other end of that, don't leave a stone unturned in your marketing to get in front of that buyer.
No. And, the thing is, I think for the agent, they don't realize how much it helps them and their own brand being seen in so many different mediums. So we would get a lot of comments of like, oh, we saw you on this website, or we saw you over here, and I didn't even know it was there, because so many different platforms pick up other platforms and so forth. But that doesn't happen without, I mean, honestly, it really just starts with an email or a phone call. Let's face it. It's reaching out to a place and not thinking of it as like, whether it's like Dwell or Curbed or, any type of platform like that.
PR.
Nothing to lose, take the chance and see if you can get your property picked up.
So you guys went through that. I mean, that listing was kind of your PhD or your education.
Yes.
Coming out of that, you sold that after, it still took a few years. It's been on the market 6 years, but patience, perseverance, taking on challenges, don't leave stones unturned. And even if you hadn't sold it, look at what you got out of it, but you did sell it. If you could hash out what you got out of that and what you learned, and give us some stories of the outcome and the business that took off from that listing.
I would say, what we definitely gave us confidence, of like, okay, even like you just said, like, well, what if it didn't sell? We got confidence regardless if it's sold or not, because, hey, we can do this. We can get this, like we can really present properties at a high level. And that's what really kind of cemented to us. And, and we knew that we were going to go to, so kind of the after effects of that were like, okay, well, when we're going to go out and meet with potential clients, to list their property, we're going to be as creative as we can. I would say a lot of the listings that we've been able to, thankfully, be offered, from our owners and our sellers, our clients through the years have been because we look at the property and, we kind of do it in 2 steps. We don't go out there ever and give a price. Okay. We go out there to look at the property, connect with them, have great exchanges, answer quite, that type of a thing. But, we go back and we brainstorm, whether on the price and on the marketing and what else can we do, because to think that we're going to think of every single avenue we can take to market that property right on site or before we've seen it is it's not going to happen. And a lot of times you go to properties, I'm sure you would agree that you might have an image in your mind and you get there and it's completely different.
Oh, right. Exactly.
And it can throw you off. So we're aware of
Yes.
it. We want to be able to really marinate in it, after we meet, and then come back and say, hey, we can do this, or hey, I think a doctor may really like this property. Let's market to doctors, for this because of the proximity near the hospital. Whatever we're going to do, we really kind of cater it to that property and try to really have a long list of things we're going to do, because we want to have things come in layers. The last thing we want to do is, and that's what we learned from that listing, circling back, is that we wanted to keep coming to the owner with things that we're going to be doing, right? And things that we're working on and things that are coming. And that really got cemented into us. So we're like, look, all of our listing appointments from here in, like, we got to have things like, if we're going to sign a 6-month agreement, or a year agreement, whatever it is, let's make sure we're marketing throughout that agreement.
Yeah, like we're getting in a listing and we're going to be doing things throughout the period of the listing, not taking it.
Not the first 2 weeks, right?
Right. And then it's just gonna.
I had a broken arm. There you go.
Yeah. Right. Oh, didn't sell. Well, maybe it will before it expires. That's a great strategy. Hope. Yeah. That's a good one.
Exactly. And so we're, that's the part that we really like. So it does all still come back to taking on a challenge. I mean, we've had a lot of properties that we knew were going to be difficult. Not all of them sold, but we wanted to have that feeling like we didn't leave any stone unturned. We did everything we could.
So when you meet this, obviously you meet the seller. How do they find you, and what does it look like the first time you meet them? And what do you call that? Is it a listing appointment, or how does that go? But first, how do they find you?
Yeah, I would say probably 4 out of 5 listing appointments are probably by referral. Whether they're a past client or past client referral, we get a lot of that. We do get, of course, calls from, if we have direct mail marketing or we have a social media presence. We could get better at it, but that's a different discussion. But it's so we do different mediums out there, but I would say still a lot of it is coming from referral. When they meet us, we pretty much tell them that it kind of goes in 2 parts. We would tell them that, the first time we're going to come out, just really get to know you and get to know the property, and really try to make it more a personable meeting that first time out. And the second time is going to be like, well, we're going to go through, everything marketing and pricing wise with you, and really just put everything on the table. That's the best approach that we found, is because we want it to be an open discussion, is really kind of our style, not like, this is what we're willing to do and this is where we think it should be priced. And then there's kind of an uneasiness, that can happen in those meetings. And that's what we try to avoid. Like, we're going to talk everything out and they're going to show you what we're thinking. And inevitably it's your call, it's your property, where we're priced, but let's talk about it. And we kind of go the more that kind of thing.
Doing this for 11 years, and you've got quite the track record, do you find when you go to that first appointment to meet the seller, you set up the second appointment, do they typically wait until the end of the second appointment to hire you? Or do you often, how do they know when to hire you?
Sometimes they'll do it right away. Just like we disconnect, because one of the best things, probably one of the most important things for being successful in this business is really about how you connect and how you present yourself. And we've gotten quite a bit that they love our energy. They love, that we're husband and wife team, or if it's just me on my own, or it's just Maria on her own, but just that type of connection that comes through because we are confident and loose and there's no pressure. We eliminate that from the room, and we really try to be transparent with everything we say. And we tell them, well, hey, we're going to be very transparent with you. This is how we are.
Yeah.
We'll just put everything out there. And what happens a lot of the time is then they end up putting everything out there from their end. And now we're going to get somewhere. So sometimes it happens quick. And sometimes, of course, if you're up against a few different agents or anything like that, we realize, our goal is to try to get as much as we can out of them as possible, whether it's not just their goals, but, sometimes it may touch on price. A lot of the time, especially when they're interviewing a few agents, they're kind of expecting you, to hear what your thoughts are first before they give you theirs. That can happen, but just try to get as much as we can out there. So then we're able to really kind of go back and say, because I think a lot of agents, when they go out and they meet with people, they don't really realize or take the time how they really are presenting themselves, and they're talking too much and they're not listening, and they're spelling out a price too quickly, and they're, or they're too passionate about the brokerage that they're working for, even though I love mine, but at the same time, it still comes down to you yourself.
Be passionate about them and their house.
Yeah.
The brokerage, that's great. But right. So and about and have the confidence.
Yeah.
Question for you: when you're, people's tendency when they're in interviews and they're nervous, to your point, and even as we get experienced, we might just get like, oh, I got this, and that means you don't. But you go in and you just talk a lot. Like, I love to talk.
Yes.
So how did you? What did you kind of go? Is there something like you kind of do to listen for, or because you don't want to go in there with like, this is my presentation and I'll tell you when I'm done. That never works, or not very well.
No.
So how do you kind of keep that flow to ensure that you engage and listen and catch what do you listen for?
I'll be honest with you. It's very rare where we even do a presentation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very rare. And I think a lot of it is it can interrupt that connection that I find. And so what I do is really, it is about listening. We do have to, sell ourselves, absolutely, but not in a bragging way whatsoever. I mean, yeah, we have sold a lot of properties, and yes, I've been in the industry for a long time. However, this is about them, and you respect that. And I think really listening and then commenting on things, I think that's what I keep in my head, just to really comment about answers we get back, things that they're thinking about, and take our time to really talk those things out, not jump on to the next point.
So give us a fun example. Like, and then we're going to ask you about the structure of your team, and then we're going to ask you the final three, not to jump ahead, but
okay.
But number one, like, what's a great side note? My listing presentations, you get a package, then you get to meet me and you get to hear if you've got questions, we'll hit on them, but it's about me getting to know you and you learning about me, and you've already read up on me before I get there.
Yeah.
If we need another meeting to evaluate other things and go further, usually they hire before that last meeting. Now, I don't have the $19 million listing sitting behind me either. You do. So to that question, how does that look like? It feels natural to the seller, but on the front end, what is your kind of process, or what is your ritual, or is there one, for lack of a better word?
I think what I really make it known, and there's always some type of system. Absolutely. I think you really want to try to research the property as much as you can. However, you are going out there with an open mind, knowing that you don't know what you're going to walk into. You don't know what kind of shape it's going to be in. You don't know what you're going to recommend. My goal is very simple to them, and that's just telling them my job is to get you the best price. And I'm going to be honest with you. If we need to take care of things, then we're going to recommend it. But the goal is for you to spend as least as possible, through that process. It's really going to be about things that we know are going to equal to, a price that's going to work for you. Going out, with them and sitting down, there, we also, with the price aspect, we do get sometimes pushed a little bit of like, well, what do you really think? You've seen it now. What do you really think? On the first meeting. And
was that the worst, right?
yeah. And I still hold my ground. I just laugh, and I say,
So wise.
I can't tell you right now until I go back and I do my analysis, and that's just what it is. And so I typically I have an analysis kind of form that I'll prepare that goes through a lot of line items of how we arrive at the price. I really truly believe in the practice of it, because I may start this at one price and I'll tell the clients, I'm like, hey, I can tell you a price right now, and then go home, go through my analysis, and then go, wait a minute, maybe it should be this. And I'm very upfront and honest with why I'm doing the things I'm doing. And so I need to do that in order to really feel like I've looked at everything. I have really considered everything, especially when you're dealing with a lot more unique properties. Yeah. That's not something you rush. If it's more cookie cutter and it's in, it's in a community that kind of speaks for itself and has the comps there. I mean,
those are easy. Yeah.
Those are a lot easier, right? But I'm still going to go back and go through it, and I'm still going to see, pay attention to trends and things like that. And if it ends up being in the same place, fine. But
but you don't give that number out. You don't.
No, I don't.
So smart, because that is like the hardest temptation to resist. I have a tough
It is. It's hard, and but what I find is, and I can also bring it back to them with how I negotiate. I don't break, so it's, if something comes up, I mean, now, kind of realize how I'm going to be when I'm representing you.
Which is huge, because a lot of people they really don't do that. And that's so important. Question for you though, that's a lot of work. So how do you know when you're going into a listing, when you're doing, 60, 70 deals a year, you're going on a lot of listing appointments. Yeah. So the last thing that you need or want, we all know there are sellers who call experienced agents, and they do one of the two things. They run 3 experienced agents through hours of valuable work, or they'll run an experienced agent through a lot of work and then go hire their buddy and take the information they just got for free. That sounds horribly pessimistic, but it's a reality.
It's a reality.
Do you see that coming? How do you see that coming? Do you do it what's your take?
Look, we've lost, more than a few, of course. My goal is to make it as difficult as possible for them to say no to what we come back with. And I've had this call numerous times where they're like, it was such a hard decision, but we decided to go with, let's say, an on-site realtor at a great community because, wow, they've just sold X amount of homes here. You've only sold this many here, and so forth. Even though at the end of the day, it does help to have that knowledge, let's say, within a community. Absolutely. Having that track record, I get it. But we still have to negotiate. We still have to market.
So what does that conversation look like? That you were going into something there, you don't let them say no. So what does that conversation look like when they call and they're like, hey, Mike, you're great. It was really hard, and what does Mike on the other end do?
Oh, when we get that call,
right.
Look, I keep it always respectful and appreciative when we get that call, because usually when you get that call, it's true. And these people, they're calling with, with a lot of respect for the effort that we put in. And so we really respect that, because you never know in this business if it comes back to you. And what if they have a falling? Yeah. What if they come back?
Yeah,
it can. And what if they have a falling out with that particular agent, or it doesn't
happens way too often, or maybe not too often. So have you ever had that call? We've all had that call and then gotten the listing down the road.
Yes.
We've had that call and they've gotten that call later that says, I wish I'd hired you, but now you get 10 referrals, which is even better. Mm-hmm. But have you ever gotten that call and changed their minds on that call?
That's a good question. By that point, I would say probably no. Because when you're at that point, we've already done our pushing in terms of
Yeah.
like pushing of not being pushy, but like in terms of like really pushing everything we're about,
Yeah.
what our recommendations are and why we're the choice. But at that point, no, you just have to take it. And typically, I just need that feeling once again to circle back that I have that feeling that we did everything we could. And then once I have that feeling, I'm good.
Mm.
If we don't get it, that's
Yeah.
okay.
We did everything we could.
I have to have that feeling. And there's been a couple of times where you're like, man, I wish I did this or said this. And those are your learning, those learning experiences. But as you get more and more experience as you go, those feelings go less and less and less because you are bringing everything you need to, on those interactions with clients, and you don't
Which
have
goes
to.
back to your ritual that we're trying to pull out of you. So, what is one of your biggest, if you would share, like moments when you lost the listing and it really should have been yours and you should have
Yeah.
done, like, what, give us one of those, like, and you
Uh,
made sure
uh,
you never made that mistake again.
you know, um, that's a tough question because I'd have to really think about that one. I would say whenever I break from a discipline going into it, like we were talking about saying a price on the first appointment, or if I started talking too much about some marketing concepts or ideas, and then went back and said, wait a minute, like this would be better or that would be better, and that's leaving a hole open for another agent to come in and say that what I didn't say. So I think not just making sure that I am not giving a lot away on that first until I'm ready to give it away, I would say is really.
Mhm.
So I've had listings where I think I either gave away a little bit too much on what our plans were or how quickly it could sell or this or that, and gone back and said, wait a minute, I should have like just waited until I really looked at this further. Because like you're saying, I mean, we're busy, we're running around. Sometimes we try to prepare for these appointments, but until I just like to get in to a listing and go through a deep dive, and until I do that, am I really sure about where I was sure about everything that I'm advising that client.
If you could narrow it down to like one best lesson learned, what's that lesson?
Um, I would say that, ooh, that's a good question. Hmm. I'll have to think about that one, to be honest, Jerry. I mean, I think that it's to me, it's still a situation. I would say to not be over eager would be a lesson to pass along to agents. Don't, when you're there, there's a lot of agents that I think put too much praise, let's say on a property. And I know we did that early on in our career. And just because you want the listing and it's so obvious, and you always have to have a balance or some type of element of restraint when you're talking with somebody about their house. And if you're over complimentary, that could be the worst thing that you do. A
Mm.
lot of clients just want to hear the truth, and of course you're always going to be respectful about it, but this is a big transaction for them, especially if they're both ends, and if they're cashing out and they have a reason for that cash that they need to hear the truth. They don't need to hear what you're hoping will get you the listing.
You could say that again. They need to hear the
Yeah.
truth, not what you're hoping will get them the listing.
Yeah.
When you
Yeah.
tell people what they want to hear and they're smart, they know you're going out for what's good for you. And when you tell them the truth and
Yeah.
you actually know that's the truth, not you're just like posturing to put on a show, because that happens too.
It can happen. And so,
They
yeah,
know. Yeah.
the last, like, I think where everybody's kind of guilty of that to a certain extent. Doesn't mean you're like, and some are really overly praising a property that has flaws, okay? And it has things that going on that are going to come back and be on, somebody's feedback, and it's something that you're going to have to dig yourself out of when the seller's like, why hasn't it sold for X price, or why haven't we got an offer yet? It doesn't mean, that you're not respectful or positive. There's a line there. It's just a matter of that, especially the first meeting. Like, once again, I don't want to let too much on,
Yeah.
because I might want to figure out how I'm going to phrase, hey, you got a big telephone pole, in the corner of your property, and it
Or you
may
turn them
be,
off completely. Like, right.
yeah. And it doesn't mean it can't sell. It's just a matter of like, okay, I need to go back because I didn't see that from the previous listing, and kind of just, stew on it for a little bit of like, what can we do with it?
So in short, for everybody, the first appointment, like listening to you, the first appointment is the appointment to truly go in and listen. And
Yeah.
and sure, you can give information, but you just go in and take it in and you just listen.
Yep.
And then you go on the second appointment to give them what they need to set the stage to determine whether you and that seller are a good fit.
Yep. And here's the other simple thing from it is that we get 2 meetings with the seller. Okay, not just one. And if they can't do it, okay, then we'll do it on Zoom. I think the biggest thing for us is to try to be face to face when we
Mm-hmm.
have these meetings, and try to avoid doing it over the phone if possible. Now,
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
we can't, but
Yeah.
more often than not, we're going to send you a Zoom link. Let's say if they're not in the area, they're not in town.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. All
Yeah.
right, so we're going on 45 minutes and we've got to get to one more thing and then your final 3 questions. So
Okay.
your team structure, so you've got a team now. When did you start building a team? What did it look like? But before all that, just give us your structure. Do you have admin? Do you have agents? What do they do?
We have, right now, we have 3 agents on our team.
Plus
That's,
the two of you.
yes, plus
Okay.
Maria and I, so 5 total. And then, we have a coordinator, that comes, that kind of is a jack of all trades for us. So he can do, marketing, he can run, transaction coordinating, whatever we need to have done. And so he's kind of really on our hip, throughout the day, a
Mhm.
lot of texting, a lot of calling, that type of thing. So we have 2 agents. We have one of our agents, Kim, has been on our team, I think 6-7 years now. So that's an eternity in real estate years. And so she started out, as our coordinator, and then worked her way up into selling, and then just as a full-time agent. And Gail is on our team. She has been an agent throughout since she joined us a few years ago. And then we just brought on a new agent, Jaslyn, that, she just started with us really recently. And she hasn't sold yet. But for us, I mean, there's just a lot of intangibles that we wanted to work with. And so we're excited to have all of them.
So you've got a solid foundation. You've got an agent who's been with you for 6 or 7, another who's been with it for you a few years.
Mhm.
What's the secret to keeping agents? You know, there's a lot of these teams, like they come and they go, and they don't
Oh
stick.
yeah. Oh
What's
yeah.
the secret to that?
Uh, Trying to kick ego out of the room. Whether we are, and this is the truth, whether we're representing the property behind you for 19 million, or I'm representing a lot for 100,000, um, the the level of commitment that we have to our clients supersedes anything, and they're depending on us. We're hired for a job, let's face it. And so we're not that. I see sometimes agents where they feel a little big, on themselves, and
Yeah.
and there's a big gap, between them and their coordinator, or them and their assistant, whatever it might be. And um, look, our agents know what we're selling and what we're doing. We don't need to talk about it. We try to keep that away. It's really about one thing and one thing only, is getting better and coming together that way. And what can you do? What, whether it's Nick, our coordinator, is fantastic, and we have him working on something. What can Nick do better? And we have that type of attitude permeating through the team, day in, day out. What we don't want is a situation where somebody starts being toxic or anything like that, because that won't work for us.
Mhm.
Production always is, your results really do, of course, matter,
Yeah.
throughout this business. But I think a lot of the time, to me, if the person is really dedicated to getting better and getting out of their comfort zone, let's face it, I mean, that's the biggest struggle we have with agents, is that whether learning tech or joining a network group, or doing something that they're not used to doing. I want to see people dive into that. And if they're not willing to do those types of things, they probably won't work out long term on our team. Because I know the results will come if they start attacking the job that way, because it did for us. I mean, we had to struggle and do a lot of things that didn't work for a long time,
Yeah.
but you don't stop, and because you're passionate about finding success.
Well said. All right, final three questions.
Okay.
First question is, what do you think has been your best resource or most powerful resource for your success?
I would probably say, for us, it was a mentor I had for myself, when I was in the mortgage side. I was lucky too. It was two. It was a husband and wife ownership team, and I was, coming out of college, did it, just trying to find my way, outside of college and into the real world. And I worked with them for about 11, 12 years. And I think I just was able to really get a fantastic foundation, because on that side, it's a lot more daily pressure of performance and
Mm.
getting business. And it's different than this. It took me a while to
You've
really
got to
kind of,
get even more business.
yeah, what did you get today, what did you do, da, da, da. So it's a lot
Um,
more of that type of attitude that came in. But I learned so much, of really just how the business really works, that really gave me a great advantage coming into the real estate side. What I struggled with was just getting used to it not being 9 to 5, to be honest.
yeah. Oh,
Like,
no kidding.
as we know,
Don't we
it's
all? I
every
don't think
day.
we all, everybody, we all in this business struggle with that, because it's just like
Yeah.
this job that we love and there's so many benefits, but it's like a break would be nice, but it's, you just, right. But then you
And because we've
remind
all
yourself
been
all
there
the
when
other
the
great things.
yeah, and we've all been there when it's been slower and slow, and when you're just hoping the phone rings. And so we struggle with that, with how much we work, when you're really
Exactly.
taking off. But it's all relative. And if you didn't have it, you would want it.
So true. I always say just don't complain, because
Yeah.
remember how hard I worked for all of this work, and just
Yeah.
enjoy every minute of it. So next question, is there a book that has kind of changed your career that you would recommend we just have to read?
Ooh. um what probably influenced me the most, to be honest, or isn't really a real estate or a business book. I would be, I read, it'd be more of like an Eastern philosophy book,
Oh, love it.
more of like Taoist principles. And, you know, I, I would just say probably anything with Lao Tzu, I would recommend, because of what it did for me is really kind of just put things in perspective and centered me kind of automatically of, when you're going through times of anxiety, or you have a lot on your plate, or how people react to you. That's so much of this business. And what drives me nuts with this business is like, when you look at ads, come on, hey, you can get 10 leads a day, and hey, you can do, it's, this business is so much more than that. It's
Yeah.
not even close. And that's not how you're successful. How you're successful really is um, how you handle people, how you handle yourself, how
Mhm.
you handle situations. And that, I would say, like, just really kind of going into the mentality that I really needed to deal with high stress environments, I would say has probably been the most beneficial to me, because I'll find myself, and like, hey, I got 6 texts to respond to, and 3 calls, and hey, I got to do this by 2 o'clock, and that other thing by 4 o'clock. And you know how we can kind of go down that road. And and I can find myself in this, go, look, I'm gonna just take it one thing at a time, and I can bring myself back into it and still work fast, still be efficient.
Work
But
faster.
yeah, but why bring in the worry and the anxiety, into that? Because we're not paid to have anxiety. We're not paid to worry. Our clients can worry. My job is to stop.
It's almost like, wait, if like come at that like American Puritanism, like
Mhm.
nothing against it, but that's what we
Sure.
are. That's what we, right? But it's almost like, oh, this is too, like, don't have too much fun. It
Yeah,
might not be worth enough. It might not make enough if this isn't hard enough. If I don't stress out enough, then it means I don't care enough, which means
totally.
I'm not going to please my client. That didn't, like you said, they're not hiring us to be stressed out.
No.
Quite the opposite.
No, they're hiring us, of course, to get the desired result, but to handle everything in its path.
Hmm.
That's what we're hired for. And if I'm worrying and I'm full of anxiety, or I'm stressing out because this happened or that happened, and look, there's some things that are out of our control, and they absolutely can ruin a deal, or deter, or put a deal in a different direction, or change the result. I just need to know that, how do I solve this? How do I still get us, the best we can get in spite of? And that's what my job is.
Exactly. All right, last question.
Okay.
If there's anything that you hope like, let's just say we're going to forget this entire conversation, everybody listening, except one thing. What is that thing? What should it be?
Um, I would probably say, for people, is to really focus on trying to anticipate problems, and anticipate your client, anticipate the process ahead of time, and to vocalize that to your clients ahead of when things happen. I find too many issues with agents that they're very reactive. So when something happens, it becomes so much more difficult um, to deliver news, to a client, because they didn't prepare them. I really kind of go down to approach when I'm talking with our clients that, look, this could happen or this could happen. All the time I'm having these conversations ahead of what can happen. And if it's, and if it ends up being, something that isn't beneficial to them, or something that's difficult, well, I've already kind of prepared them. That would be something that I would tell them. And and also, when you get good news like an escrow, look, that's step one. I see so many agents
Exactly.
celebrating, and I'm like, look, that's just one step. And to do that with your clients, let them know that, like, look, all right, we got the offer, we got it approved, I have this, but now we have a series of hurdles that we need to clear. And it's going to start with their deposit, and we're going to work through our inspections and do this, and we're going to take this a step at a time. I tell them I don't feel good about anything until we at least get all their contingencies removed. And that's what my goal is, and so I'm preparing them as opposed to just celebrating. And then, I see that
That's
happen.
such great advice, because I think a lot of people get frustrated in the inspection phase, and
Oh,
clients get
yeah.
frustrated because they were so excited to get that contract
Yep.
that it just completely killed that buzz that they really should have should have been used.
Totally. And you're sending these clients off into this imaginary world that everything's going to be perfect from here in. And, you know, if
No
it
wonder,
is,
no wonder people hate real estate agents when that happens, because that's just not how it goes.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
We see it too much. And then, you know, when we're working on deals with other agents, and you can tell the ones that have prepped their clients or haven't. And you know when things are going to be an issue and when they're not going to be an issue. So that would be one of the biggest things of advice is like, look, you're not at the finish line until you're at the finish line. And I know you want to be excited, but you have to restrain yourself. You got to get through it.
Exactly. Well, I like it. You got to restrain yourself.
You do.
Good advice. Well, Mike, thank you so much for being on the Jere Metcalf Podcast. And
this was great.
See you. Mike. I always say it wrong. Now I'm going to say it wrong. Patakas.
Mike Patakas, you got it.
I always say it wrong. I want to say it like I want to spell your name differently. But anyway, good to see you and looking forward to having Maria on.
All right. Sounds good, Jere. Thanks so much for everything. Take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. If you like this episode, please share it with friends. To find more episodes, search Jere Metcalf Podcast on any platform for podcasts, or go to JereMetcalfPodcast.com. That's JereMetcalf podcast.com.